Good.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with the Pioneer, and I'm Kushan Mitra. Today I'm interviewing the first of my friends from the automotive side of things, Renuka Kripalani, who is the executive editor video for Autocar. You see her a lot on the Autocar show, which is on ET Now and Times
Times
Now.
Network?
Yeah, Times Network.
Yeah.
When does it come on, Renuka?
So, our first show goes on Friday on ET Now, and then we have repeats across the weekend on both ET Now and Times Now.
Okay, and you've been doing this for a very, very long time. So, Renuka, first I want to get to, as a woman, I'm sorry if please don't get me wrong, but I just want to know, as a woman, is it difficult in a very testosterone-filled world that it is, that the automotive space is, let alone automotive journalism, where you've been, read out for years, and we've known you, and you're one of the best auto evaluators out there, period. And,
Thank you, Kushan, for that. But just, when I get asked this question a lot, so I take no offense to it because I gather that, yeah, it is different. But to be honest, there are very, very few instances where I have felt that difference. Yeah. With you guys, I'm one of the guys. I mean,
Yes.
you know it. You
Yeah,
guys have never treated me different. Very often I have to remind you, excuse me, I'm around, watch what you say. So, it's never really been that difference for me. As far as the journalists have been concerned, never seen a bias amongst my peers and colleagues. As far as the auto industry it has been concerned, very, very few people who have maybe been newer have kind of looked at me and said, and given me that, okay. And then post the reviews and post the evaluation, I guess that mindset changes. So yeah, it takes a little while for people to assume, because I think that whole myth of women, cars, can't drive, it's a myth that we have to bust. So I guess that some people still have that impression. And then, then talk technical about cars, and that completely shatters them.
Oh, no,
the times I have faced bias, most strangely, with my own drivers. When when things have gone wrong with the car and I have told them what to do, they kind of look at me like, especially when they're new. Now my driver's been around with me for years. He doesn't question me anymore.
No, I grew up with a mother who drove me around, and my wife drives. It's important for women to drive, because I think driving or riding a scooter or whatever gives girls independence in a way that few other modes can, because when you're mobile and you don't have to depend on public transport or even the men of your house to move you around, I think it makes a world of difference. We are seeing a lot more girls entering motorsport, particular now. Of course, the FIA started the Formula W series, we are yet to see. Of course, there's Aishwarya Pasi, who's a great rider and who's doing India quite proud. She's award-winning, and but it's still in percentage terms, it's still far too few, right? And what can be done to encourage?
But I think even if you see, even on the male side, on a global arena, the guys have also found it really hard to compete with the rest. And I think that doesn't come from being male or female. I think it comes from motorsport not being like cricket in our country. So when you go to your dad and say, hey, I want to be a race car driver, my dad included, who was a race car driver himself, looks at you and says, huh, what, why, So honestly, I had to buy my first race car. Of course, it was a race prepared car that my dad, and they were selling it off, and I convinced him that I needed a car to drive when I was 18 and that I wanted to buy a car. But when I told him I wanted to race, he kind of wasn't agreeable with it, despite that being his profession too. So I think, that's changing slowly in our country, where they're realizing, with the go-karting tracks and the racing tracks around the country, people seeing their kids actually perform and then realizing, hey, they do have a talent for this. So abroad, it's very, very recognized as a sport. And so, parents give their all to their children in motorsport. So they start karting at 8 or 9, and then it's like their life. So I think that's why there is that kind of imbalance over here. And I think the moment we start recognizing motorsport as a sport, that perception will change. You saw it in F1. I mean, we taxed it because the country itself doesn't give it the recognition, and that needs to happen.
I think that is changing now, and of course, as you know, you and I have both driven on racetracks with very fast cars, and you know how physically exhausting an experience, you know, after even up
Exactly.
5-6 laps. So, and we've seen Formula One drivers work out, and as you said, like
so diet, fitness, all of it, you know, it all has to start at a young age, and I think now we're seeing so many more women doing it as well, and I think it's really great.
You know, something I've always found a bit sexist in the industry also is the concept of making vehicles for women. You know, personally, I always feel a car is genderless. You know, anybody can buy a car. A girl should have. Do you think car marketing was not as testosterone filled and as sexist as it was in the 1980s? Do you think it still is a bit stuck in the past?
In India, sometimes, yes. I mean, we've seen things like Men Are Back and things like that. You know, and I mean, hey, I think if you go into any household in India, and you ask who eventually made the decision to buy the car in the family, there'll always be a woman behind it somewhere. And that permission or that decision or that co-decision will always have someone involved. So I think that needs to be recognized too. They are a large part of the decision-making process, especially in India where family means so much to us. You know, we're not just buying a car for ourselves. Sometimes we're buying it for the whole family, and then it's a joint decision. Abroad, it's a lot different because everybody buys their car more personally. They drive their own car, and you know, husband and wife have their separate cars and things like that. So yeah, there are certain cars that are more. And honestly, sometimes I don't even find it sexist. I think there should be some cars that are engineered to be a little bit more convenient to women who have carpools, things they need to carry, grocery runs to do. So it's great if there are cars engineered for that. That's fine.
Renuka, one more aspect that's also becoming more common with vehicles today is, of course, safety. And of course, government has mandated now that all cars have ABS systems and airbags. But do you personally see safety, being a mom yourself, when you had younger kids, you think safety is ignored by most of us in India with regards to children?
So when I had my kids, Kushan, there was no such thing as the ISOFIX, for the kids' seats. And I remember the first thing I did was buy a car seat for my children. They kicked up a fuss and they had to be strapped in the wrong way around, because in those days, that's how you did it with the seat belt, because, there wasn't the ISOFIX in the A. So I think it's of utmost importance. People just don't give it enough importance. I'm happy that people are giving it more and more importance of late. I think we journalists also need to talk about it more and more. And the more we propagate it, I think the more people will realize how important it is. It's an issue very close to my heart. A lot of panels I've helped on, a lot of places I've gone. Every time I can talk about it, I do talk about it to people. If people call me for car advice, that's the first thing I tell them. Don't compromise on the variant, go for the safety, I think often people don't realize small facts, like it's the kid in the back seat. It's not only for the child's safety, it's also for your own. That much weight coming hurtling at you, even at 30 kilometers an hour when you brake hard, can snap your neck too, So people don't realize small things like this, which I think they need to know more and more. And I think you've been as well to the Volvo museum. And they depict a lot of these things really, really well. And I remember the one thing that stood out at me was they made me climb this really tall step ladder, about 2 stories high. And they said, jump. And I said, are you crazy? I'm not jumping. And they said, then why do people in India not wear seatbelts? It's the equivalent of that. And you need people to hear and see these things to realize actually what it means. You wouldn't jump out of the second story of your window. But sitting in a car without your seatbelt is as unsafe.
No, and I know one of my pet peeves is when I see parents letting their children, hang out of sunroofs.
Hang out of the sunroof.
Yeah, I mean, we may not have known better back in the 80s or 90s. We were younger. It wasn't such a safety conscious age. When we were growing up, Our parents really didn't know better. I mean, smoking and,
We
a
also
lot
didn't
of...
have sunroofs back then,
No,
Kushan.
you had
We had
convertibles.
ambassadors, Fiats, and no sunroofs.
No, you had convertibles. You had lots of convertibles. I know because I grew up around the
That's right.
Standard Herald. So uh,
True.
my dad had one
I
back in the
did
day.
too. But
Okay.
ours was not a convertible. Yeah.
No, ours wasn't the convertible, but his friends had convertibles because quite a few of his friends had Heralds. It's a
Yeah.
fascinating story, that, but we'll get to more later. What, of course, I was just driving a car, the Volkswagen yesterday, and my wife was driving, and I was noticing, how creature comforts in cars have evolved so much just in the last 2 decades. Um,
Amazingly.
I mean, uh, I'm parking in spots nowadays that, with reversing cameras and sensors. But at a level, do you think having these creature comforts, having some of these safety aids has made us worse drivers on the whole? Could we drive a 1980s car maybe today?
I wouldn't speak for yourself and myself, but I would speak for the generation that is. I have an intern just now, and he came with us on a drive, and I said, "Okay, great, you can drive me back." And he went, "Ma'am, I've only driven automatics, so." And I was driving a manual. So yeah, I mean, I think my kids they had to learn on a manual. There was just no choice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things are evolving, and I think it is the same story with how WhatsApp has made people forget how to write. So these things will happen. It's part of the evolution of things. So I guess we have to live with the times and accept what's coming. And if you want them to be going around and driving manual cars somewhere in the future, without power steerings and things, I think they'll find it pretty hard.
No, without power steering, I don't think kids can now drive without ABS at a level because you see the mistake.
Yeah.
What we were taught never to brake in corners and all of that, and I think it's also made softer drivers out of
I
us.
had an accident. To tell you a story, very, very many years ago, driving down to a rally. We were two girls in the car, so we kind of gone ahead to go to the loo, and we told them catch up because we're just going off.
Mm-hmm.
And we were driving really slowly down a tree-line highway, waiting for the boys to catch up behind us. And this tempo traveler comes up off the road onto the highway where there is no crossing and comes straight at us with no warning. And it was a tree-line highway, so you couldn't see him come up. And he just kind of came up. He panicked. I'd gone to the extreme left of the road, and force of habit, brake left to slow it down and not lock up the brakes. Yeah. And I remember post the accident, and when the truck driver saw it, and their whole reaction was, "Isne to brake chhod diya iske liye," and kind of that's what ABS does for you now. It makes sure you don't lock up your brakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, these things take time for people to understand. I think these kind of things, I think people of today won't understand that how we used to drive then differently then and how we drive now. And yeah, these comforts do make it a lot easier.
Renuka, you also run a private venture where you do long journeys for people with long driving journeys. Can you tell us a bit more about that? We've been talking. You do these things from India to London and all of that. I mean, so how can somebody
it's called Road Tripper. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Road Tripper, and it's because I'm a road tripper myself.
Okay.
The love was always there to drive by road, and in India, people I think now it's become a big thing to do it, but earlier on, I think almost about 10-12 years ago when I started this off, we were probably the only ones offering something like this. Because people were still very wary about going out by road and then crossing a border and going into another country. I remember the first time I drove from Singapore to India, and I told people, they said, "What? You can drive?" And people were extremely shocked about the fact that you can actually drive from Singapore to India, or India to Singapore, and across Southeast Asia. So I think the best way to see the world is through your windscreen. I think you'd agree. There's so much more that you see, you absorb, you get along the way that you'd miss if you took a flight. So the love of that made me start this. My work is so busy that it's not a full-fledged business, but for extremely passionate people or groups of people or companies that want to travel together and do this, I definitely still do it and set it up. And, everything from from the logistics, the permits, the routes, to telling you things to do along the way, the kind of adventure activities. I mean, it depends on what you like to do, how you like to do it. And yeah, we've organized trips around the world for people. We've organized Bombay to London, London to Bombay, and down to Southeast Asia, to Myanmar, to China, lots of different things, Germany to India. I mean, plenty of it. We've done all of that.
Renuka, I mean, we've traveled a fair bit. I mean, both of us together, along with many others. But you've been traveling across the world. What has been your most memorable global driving experience?
Northeast China, Harbin.
Okay.
I know it's not the best place to mention or talk about these days. It's kind of, but on many levels, I think China, when I drove through it, Mongolia and China, actually, I would say, even Mongolia, when I drove through Mongolia, just that expanse of the country and just nothingness around you for miles and miles and miles with a dead straight road. In Mongolia, and then coming into China, their infrastructure, the roads, the way they build things, that amazes me about that country. But the experience was driving on ice in Northeast China and Harbin in -30. It was kind of crazy, but it was a fabulous experience.
Renuka, for both of us, we fly a lot. We haven't taken a flight in 6 months, I guess, now, both of us.
I think the longest we haven't flown in many, many years.
I think it's the longest I haven't flown since college, pretty honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, after college, ever since I became a journalist, I should at least travel once a month minimum. This is a very crazy time. I mean, so what's been your most traumatic flying experience? Have you been stuck at airports or missed flights and all of those? I mean, what's been
my gosh, yes, traumatic experience. Tell us about it. We were on were you there with us? I think it was a BMW drive. We had all gone off to America, so we had a brilliant flight there.
No, this was United, the one I missed. This, I think you guys went to. I wasn't there.
So we had a United flight. We landed in Newark, and it's normally the first flight to land, so you get in and out of that immigration, which otherwise takes ages. And there was this flight before us, and there was this massive queue, and we had an hour and a half to catch a flight to Canada. Needless to say, they were not very helpful. We missed, we were stuck in that queue for an hour. We literally had half an hour to run to the next connection. The train that goes from terminal to one had collapsed. So basically everything that had to go wrong went wrong. We reached the next terminal just about in time, got stuck in the security queue because someone was insisting on carrying some kind of liquid, and we missed that flight. And then about 20 journalists had to then get on to various different flights. We missed the flight to, Canada. We had to get on to a very different flight, arrived late at night. The flight from Canada to Spartanburg, we had the same issue. We stopped in Washington. There was a thunderstorm that was delayed. We missed a flight. Leaving Spartanburg, we were all going to different places. All our flights were delayed because there was again another storm. So it was one hellish trip. But, we were all together. We all laughed about it. We had fun. It was not the best travel experience, but since we were all together, it was pretty cool. We just went through it. But after that, in America, I do not take, if I have to go in and out, I try and take a direct flight to wherever I'm going and try not to have connecting flights, because it's on a variety of occasions I've had crazy experiences there.
Actually, I've been fairly lucky. I've not taken more than one stop ever in the US, and always build in a lot of time. Otherwise, the US.
I think you have to build in a lot of transit time over there, because that sometimes kills you otherwise. Yeah,
it kills you because immigration can take forever, as you all know in the US. Thanks, Renuka. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being on board. These conversations aren't too long, only about 15 to 20 minutes each. But thanks, Renuka.
It's been fun.
It's been fun. So, by the way, so you just drove the Kia Sonet as well. You've driven the Thar. What's been the most exciting car you've driven so far, and any car you're looking forward to driving in the next few months?
I've been trying to get my hand on that Skoda Octavia VRS. That's one car that I really, really want to drive. Still haven't driven it. The Audi RS Q8, because my colleague Nikhil did the story and I'm still not forgiving him for that one. But yeah, the Sonet and the Thar, very impressed with both of them. Kushan, I think you've seen the reviews, both impressive, and I think Kia's
Kia's
got
done a
another
good job.
winner on their hands. Yeah, they've done a really good job with it. And I think Mahindra have done a great job with the Thar as well.
Thanks, Renuka. I'm stopping the recording, not the conversation.